Welcome to the Curious Hearts Collective podcast, here to help you align to life in joyful, creative, and inspiring ways with your host, Vanessa Trufin.
Okay, Angus, I'm so excited that we get to sit down for another conversation. And this time I know that you're looking forward to asking me some questions, so I'm ready whenever you are.
Yeah, let's shift and put the shoe on the other foot here. I'm gonna start asking you questions this time. I'm really excited because you are such an amazing person, and you are a light to the world for sure. And I have been talking to you now for a couple weeks on this creative phase that you're entering, and I'm super excited because I know it's not just for you. It's for, like, I'm gonna call it your tribe, like your
Mhm.
people that you're doing this for not just you, you're doing it for so many more. So can you tell me, kind of paint a picture of like what's on your heart, what's coming up for you and for the group of people that you want to inspire?
I love that question. Thank you. It's been I last time we talked about the creative leader and the feminine leader and what that looks like to lead from the femininity. And um as I grow, as I mature, as I go through life, I realize what's important and what's valuable to me. And I think in my 20s and in my much earlier 30s too, my values were skewed. I think it was the values of my parents, religion, society, and I led my life in that way. And it's like when you're driving a car and your car pulls a little to the left, but you're so used to it, so you just kind of adjust a little bit, pull a little bit to the right so that you drive in a straight line
That's a
until
great move.
thank you, until somebody else drives your car and they point out, hey, your car pulls a little bit to the left, did you know? And you're so used to adjusting every single time that you drive that somebody pointing it out kind of, oh, yeah, my car does pull to the left.
Yeah.
Well, are you going to
You're
do
like
anything about it?
compensating. You're like
Yeah,
compensating, right? Like the
and you're
muscles are always engaged and you don't
exactly.
even know. And then it's like once you get it tuned up and you get those wheels aligned, it's like, oh, I can just like go. Like I can just drive. I don't have to be like pulling to straighten my life out.
Yeah,
I love that. I think in metaphor. So like when you said that, I'm like, oh, that's such a great
no,
metaphor.
so do I. That's one of the ways that I try to land with the people that I communicate. And sometimes I feel like I'm in my own head and it only makes sense to me. So I try to find ways to land it. So thank you. I'm glad that that
Yeah.
helped. So at some point, well, not at some point, last year I decided that one of the words for my life would be alignment. And I didn't even understand that my car was pulling to the left so much until I intentionally chose to realign.
Yeah.
And it was a period of a lot of self reflection, a lot of honesty, a lot of tears, a lot of discomfort, and a lot of hard choices. And I realized that I was living my life out of alignment. And I no longer wanted to live my life out of alignment. And I know that I'm not alone. I know that there are many, many, many of us who are compensating by pulling a little bit to the right so that our car stays on the road. And if we were to suddenly let it go, what would happen? And it took a lot of courage and it took a lot of time and work and focus and energy to be able to realign myself, to get clear on who I am, what my values are, why I am here on this earth experiencing life as Vanessa, and what I'm going to do about it, what I'm going to cause and create in my life. And right now, with the creative tribe that we're talking about, I'm calling it the Curious Hearts Collective because I'm a very curious person and I'm a very heart-led leader, and I know that other people like that exist. It's really my time to connect to myself and to live a life that I like living, that I'm loving living, a life where I feel success in balance and fulfillment. And I'm using this as an opportunity, as a vessel to inspire others to pose curious thoughts and creativities and inspire them to find their light, to live their life in alignment, and giving them the tools that they need to be able to create that in their life too. Because I had to search for a lot of them, and I also had a lot of support. So I want to be a vessel of support for them to be able to live a life that they love living and find ways to inspire others to do the same.
I love that. The Curious Heart Collective is such a great name.
Thanks.
Especially love the use of alliteration. It always gets me.
Me
Uh,
too.
but first, before we go into that more, can we go into like the hard part of that? Can I dig a little bit there?
Yeah.
So when you're talking about taking your hands off the wheel and like your life vehicle is about to crash into the curb, like who were you the most concerned about disappointing or upsetting, or like who were the people that you were trying to guard and make your life be approved for? And like how have you gone through that journey of either having conversations with them or cutting them off, or what did it look like to say, I'm done pulling my car, I'm now aligning it this way regardless of what everybody thinks? Like who were some of those people that were your real struggle? Because I'm sure that there are going to be women and men listening to this who are like, oh, my dad, I don't want to have that, my
Oh, yeah.
grandmother, what did it really look like? Who were you really kind of internally battling against, and what did it look like to have those conversations or actions to overcome it?
I love that question. Nobody's ever asked me that. And I love that you asked me that because it's part of my mission to help people with the tools that they need to be able to have those conversations with the people in their life. So thank you for that opportunity to share that. My family. I was married for 10 years. Dennis, my, I guess now soon to be ex-husband, and I were together for 13 of those years. And that was absolutely one of the hardest, not because I was afraid of what it would do to the relationship. It was mostly because of the change that I know needed to occur to be in alignment with myself. Um, a quick little backstory on that. He and I, so we were married for 10 years, and for about 6 or 7 of those years, we chose to be ethically non-monogamous. So we were polyamorous. And I say ethically because we talked about everything, every feeling, every thought, every desire, every hard feeling, everything. We had really good open communication around it. And in a desire to live in alignment with myself, it's something that I chose to share with my mom. I am a first generation Latina. I grew up Catholic. My mom immigrated to this country when she was 16 years old. So she had her own vision of what success for a Latina woman in the US looked like. And I was terrified. I mean, shaking in my boots that my mom would hear and see me authentically and not like who I am. And I mean, I hid that part of my life for years until finally I was like, I'm realigning my car. And part of that action means coming out to my mom. And it really was like a coming out story. I had and I faced the fear of I ran the risk of she will see who I am authentically and choose to no longer be in my life. And I got to love myself more than my mom, which makes me nervous saying that out loud. And I'm like shivering a little bit. My mom is my favorite person in the world. You know, she's done so much so that I can be who I am. And I know that I terrified her in a lot because I'm braver in some ways, braver than her in ways that scared her. So when I sat her down and I told her about closing my business, she cried. She was like, "No, my God, Vanessa, what are people gonna think? What are people gonna say? If you're a Spanish speaker, you may have heard this. ¿Qué va a decir la gente? What are
That,
people gonna say? What are people gonna say?" So I constantly grew up hearing, "What are people gonna say?"
right.
And I looked at her and I was like, who is people? ¿Quién es la gente? Who are you talking about? Who are you so concerned and worried about? That she was basing so many of her choices in her life based on what people would think.
Yeah, the
And
approval.
I made that choice to no longer let that influence the choices that I was making in my life. So when I came out to my mom, when I told her about this, I had to, first of all, find the words in Spanish to do so, because I had this whole conversation with her in Spanish. And I got to remind myself it is her choice if she wants to be in my life or not after this. And I'm going to be open and I'm going to be honest and I'm going to live my life for me. If she chooses to be part of it, I will rejoice. I will be grateful. I will be happy. I will be loving. And if she chooses to not, I had made the choice for myself that I would ease her into it. I would answer all of the questions that she had, and I would make it very clear to her that I was going to be living my life for me and that I want her to be part of it and that it was her choice. So that was one of the hardest conversations that I had when it came to realigning my life with my mom. She's important to me, and it was a tough conversation. She had a lot of questions she didn't understand for a long time. And another one was the relationships in my life, my romantic relationships. I had two romantic relationships that really were dear to me and meant a lot to me. And in my new realignment, I knew that I ran the risk of being alone. I knew that I ran the risk of not having these romantic partners in my life anymore because it just didn't align to who I am, as I'm honoring my authenticity, I was like, I get to love myself more. So that was a tough question. I love that you asked that. And one of the things that helped me honor my authenticity and love myself was familiarizing myself with the risks that I was willing to pay. And knowing that that risk I may not have to pay that price, and knowing that I may have to pay that price. And I did. And
Yeah.
and in that, course to be authentic and honor who I am single now. And I did pay that price, and I'd do it again. Yeah.
Sounds like I'm gonna kind of lead the witness here a little bit, so feel free to correct me. But it sounds like as you went into those conversations, obviously there's emotion, there's fear, there's anxiety and stuff like that, but you weren't leading with those things. You had kind of done some like grounding or something, some maturing. So what were some of your ways of being that allowed you to go in and be congruent and have those conversations and not be super swayed by all the emotions that could have been, affecting you up until that point?
I love that question. Another great question. Um, Honesty was one of the big ways that was important. And I want to say that I chose to be honest with myself above all, honest with myself about what worked, what didn't, what I wanted. And it took a lot of journaling, to be honest with you, of this is this is what I want, this is what I'm thinking. And then I would go back and read it and reflect and ask myself, are those my wants?
Right.
Are those really my wants? Are those really my values? Or am I choosing that because I've been taught and I've been told my whole life that it was important to me?
Right.
And that level of honesty was really important to have with myself. And of course, it was very important to have with the people in my life. And as I was going through that journey, I told the people in my life, I'm experiencing growing pains, and you may be experiencing growing pains too. I was honest and I said, there are some actions, behaviors, ways of being that worked in the past that don't anymore. And we will be experiencing growing pains together. And I made a commitment then and there to them and to me to be honest, to be open, to be vulnerable. Honest, open, and vulnerable because I wanted to live a life where I was authentic and when I was aligned to who I really am.
Wow.
So it took a lot, it took work. We've talked about this in the past, you and I, in past conversations, where it's a muscle. It's
Yeah.
like a muscle that you get to work on and daily work on. And it started with myself and then carried on into the relationships with the people that I was in.
What's amazing is you I'm gonna call this your molting phase. I don't know if you're familiar with that, but there are lots of animals that like when they get to a certain phase, snakes shed their skin, but like even more than that, like lobsters, when they get to a certain size, they have to choose to either remain in the discomfort of their old shell, or they can actually molt, and the old shell will come off and they are literally naked, completely vulnerable to predators. And they have to choose that if they want to grow and move to their next level. And so you saying that vulnerability was one of your ways of being, like, I love that, because it does. And we talked about this in the last episode. Being vulnerable is not a weakness. It is the courage to expose your weakness. And that takes tremendous strength. It takes tremendous courage to say, here it is, here I am, and I'm taking the risk of putting myself out there. This could go terribly wrong for me, and it's still worth doing. I love that you took that risk.
Thank you. I love that you even brought that up as an example. I did have coaches. I did have mentors. I've been consistently in therapy for 3 years. And one of the things I remember is I called this part of my life caterpillar goo. I felt like I chose to be this amazing caterpillar with big dreams of being a butterfly. And that part of my life was the caterpillar goo, where I was in my cocoon, disintegrating everything. And I was just swimming in this caterpillar goo of who I was and who I had been up until that moment. And everything had to come out. Everything had to come out. It was an uncomfortable part of my life. I get to be completely honest about that. And as I get to write a book about this one day. I know I do. But as I was crafting and formatting in my life into becoming a butterfly again, I realized my wings aren't big enough to carry all of these old stories anymore. My wings are not strong and sturdy enough to carry these old beliefs with me anymore. And I got to be really intentional and honest about what I was going to put on my wings, what design I was putting on my wings, what colors, and everything had a meaning. I don't know what my wings look like now, but in that period of my life when I was the caterpillar goo, it was a lot of shedding, disintegrating, and realizing that I cannot be a butterfly if I'm still that caterpillar. I can't. And I'm going to be reaching newer heights in life with the massive wings that I was building and creating for myself. So I love that you said that, because it's exactly what it felt like. It was just a metamorphosis. Sometimes it felt like I wasn't even a caterpillar. It just felt like I was a phoenix that caught flames. And then I was like, okay, time to rebirth myself from the ashes.
Yeah, that's funny. If I ever get a tattoo, it will be of a painting that I did that is a phoenix, because I remember, and you and I may have talked about this earlier, I can't remember, but when I went through that first divorce, there was a phase where I felt like I was dead. Like I literally, I can't explain it because it doesn't make sense, but I was just going through the motions of life, like all my hopes, all my dreams, my whole ego, like everything that I thought my future was. I left the job that I thought I would enjoy and do for the rest of my life, my family, like everything was just like dead. And at some point I had this realization, but I'm not dead. So that means I'm still alive. So if I'm still alive, then what could I create and what could I do? And the phoenix is a great, metaphor for that. And so it's absolutely, I guess I'm saying this not for you and not for me, but for anybody watching who's going through that crazy experience of dying. Like you feel like you're dying right now. There is absolutely new levels and success and victory on the other side of it. Keep going, keep putting one foot in front of the other until you figure out how to launch again, because it's out there, and your opportunity, your victory is in front of you if you keep going.
Yeah, in that moment, and I remember that conversation that we had, because I resonated with that, because I also had a moment in that time spirit. I remember it was Christmas time, and Christmas is my favorite holiday. And I would wake up in the mornings and stare at the Christmas tree and my decorations in my house, and I'd feel nothing. I felt nothing. I felt like I was dying. And for somebody who's such a deep feeler, who's so connected to her emotions, to not feel anything was terrifying. And this is a Disney reference. So anyone listening to that, I don't know if you're going to understand this or not. It's a movie, Wreck-It Ralph. And one of the main characters in it, her name is Vanellope, and she's a character in a video game, and she glitches. There are moments when she has intense glitches, and I felt like I was glitching in my life. Like I had these flashes of, you're creative. And I was like, what? Who said that? And suddenly I'd go into my office and I would doodle. And it was like, you're passionate. And I was like, what? Who said that? And I would sit at my piano and I would feel passion again. And I was just having these small little glitches of reminders of who I am, of the real authentic Vanessa,
Yeah.
of like the person deep within, which is why I'm calling this my creative era,
Yeah.
because it's reconnecting to the self in that way, allowing myself to experience those parts of my authenticity that have always been there. The
Yeah.
parts where I'm like excited to play in. It's just I feel like a kid again. You
Yeah.
know, I'm like, oh, I want to sit down and do this. Oh, I want to sit down and do that.
Yeah.
And it doesn't feel like work.
See, I call that your higher self. Like that's
Mm.
there's you that's in your head thinking your thoughts all the time, and then there's the higher version of you who's like, Vanessa, step up here. Like this is where you belong. Like it's calling you if you listen to it. But so often, as we talked about last time, we're in our thoughts, we're in our to-do list, we have all the things that we need to do that we aren't actually listening to. Like what is my life supposed to be doing? What should I be doing right now? What lights me on fire? We have to get out of the thoughts and into listening to what feels like it's calling us to that greater future. So I love that you had you were able to like hear that through the noise of all the, the death, all the the suck that you were in. You were able to hear that higher version of you calling you out of that, and that's beautiful.
Thank you for that, for presencing that, because there are times now when I think back to Caterpillar Goo Vanessa, and I send her so much love. I shout those things to myself now, and I send her strength, and I'm like, you're so loved. I'm so proud of you. You're so loved. I'm so proud of you. Because in those moments when I did feel that, I'm like, I don't know where it's coming from. And I get to give that to myself. I got to give that to myself. And one of the tools I want to say this because anyone listening may have those questions of what do I do when I'm caterpillar goo? What do I do when I am that phoenix that's just like ashes when you're in?
That might be your book title. You might need to find something else, but what do I do when I'm caterpillar goo? Like that has a great ring to it.
I love that. Thank you so much. I'm laughing because it just feels like alignment to
I know.
me. Alignment feels like joy, and I've gotten to practice being with myself and my body, and alignment now I know feels exhilarating. And what do I do when I'm caterpillar goo just makes me giggle, and I'm like, oh my God, that's a book I want to write. So thank
Right?
you.
It's a book that a lot of people need to read. I know that much.
Oh yeah. Meditation helped a ton. And I want to presence that this is something that a coach challenged me to do because I was too busy in my life, too overwhelmed in my life to ever do anything. And I was like, meditate for 30 minutes. Are you crazy? And she was like, it's an hour now. And I was like, ah. It was one of those like when you're a kid and they're like, say it again and you're going to be grounded for an extra week. And you're just like, zip it up. I won't say a single thing. But when she challenged me to meditate for an hour, that was the very first time I ever wrote a song on the piano. Because I was in stillness. I was with myself. I was focusing on my breathing, focusing on how my body felt. And after that, I sat down to play. And in that stillness of just being present with myself, I wrote a song. And I was like, holy cow, this stuff works. I mean, it happened for me that quickly, that one time.
Yeah.
It's not similar results for everybody, but meditation helped. Paying attention to how my body felt. So I had this, I think this was something my therapist told me once. She said, sit with your body in a comfortable space, deep breaths, eyes closed. And I asked my body, what does a yes feel like? And then I was like, okay, where do I feel that? What does a no feel like? And then I sat with that. And then I started saying, like, my name is Sarah, knowing that it's not. And then knowing how my body would react to that. My name is Vanessa, and seeing how my body would react to that. So in that practice, continual practice, I got connected with who I am. I got connected to my body, and it communicates to me information constantly of when something feels like alignment versus when something doesn't. So I love the questions you're asking because there's a lot of good stuff there.
Well, I love it too because, like thinking back to our previous episodes, talking about the masculine and the feminine, we were talking about how do you get out of your head and get into your body, and like you were so in your masculine for so long that some of these practices helped you get into your feminine, and then that created the space for your creativity to flow through you, and all of a sudden you've produced your first song, like, and that I bring that up because it ties into this Creative Hearts Collective, because that's what you are guiding your tribe through, is like, how do you get present to like what the higher version of you is calling you to do and be, and then how do you stand up for that alignment that you get to go through to create the future that your higher self is calling you to. I love like how this story is weaving itself, so it's beautiful.
Thank you. It took a lot of honesty and vulnerability. I know I've said that so many times, but deciding to close my store, it was a tough thing to do because it was something that I visualized and I wanted to do. I helped so many women find confidence and the ability to wear a dress, that meant so much to them. And to close that, I thought it meant my mom's voice was in my head. ¿Qué va a decir la gente? What are people going to think? That I failed, that I wasn't a good business owner, that insert whatever story you want to, there are so many things my mind could have come up with. And being honest and listening to myself of like, I don't want to do this anymore. And like, I really don't want to do this anymore. And having the courage that I needed to take action on that was tough. Realizing I'm in a marriage with somebody that's my best friend, but I was holding him to these expectations of a husband where it just didn't work. And being honest with myself and saying, I don't want to be married anymore was hard. And then taking action on that was a challenge as well. But what's harder? I asked myself that too. What's harder? Staying in a relationship I no longer want to be in, or taking action that then led to freedom?
Yeah.
Staying would be so much harder. It would mean a lifetime of continuously adjusting and pulling your car to the right because it just wants to pull left.
Yeah. I know we're running out of time for this episode, but now I want to ask you about like, because you and I have talked before these episodes, some about like the polyamory and like where you think your life and your romantic relationships are going in the future. And like, I feel like there's a bunch that we want to dig into, but I think we should probably leave that for the next episode. So
Right.
anything that you want to say, and we're just getting the surface scratched of the Creative Hearts Collective. So I know more of that's going to come out, and we're going to create opportunities for people to connect to that and get their healing, get their alignment, and that release for their big vision. But is there anything else that you want to say as we wrap up today?
Yeah. So it is the Curious Hearts Collective.
What did I say?
Creative, which I
I'm
don't
so sorry.
mind.
I'm
No,
so
no,
sorry.
you're totally fine.
I knew it was curious, but I said it wrong. So
creativity is a big part of it. Creativity is who I am, one of my favorite ways of being anyway. So I did dabble between curious and creative, but Curious Hearts Collective, I think, allows the opportunity for people to express their creativity in whatever way that looks like. I think about your partner, Mayan, for example, and she's a very analytical person. And I imagine that when I think of May and expressing her creativity, it may look completely different than the way that I would express my creativity. And yet we're both still playing in our own unique creativity. But to just kind of leave everybody with this, for those in the caterpillar goo, and I'm saying this to Vanessa of a couple years ago in her caterpillar goo, I love that you said too, Angus, that there's a lot of strength on the other side of that. There's a lot to look forward to in that. And while you're there, give yourself grace, pour love into yourself, be honest with who you are, be honest about your pain, about your suffering, about your goals, about your vision, and give yourself grace. Ask for support. Allow yourself to be supported and do things for yourself that bring you joy, that spark curiosity, that open you up to love in whatever that may look like. It will get better. And you get to be the one to choose how that happens for yourself.
Yeah.
I just want to say that. I just want to say that and leave us with that.
I want to add one last thing. Pay attention to the people who support you in that phase, because there's going to be people who abandon you or who don't care. And there are going to be people who absolutely come underneath you and help lift your wings. And so those are the real people those are the people you can rely on.
Yeah, thank you for saying that. That's true. Thank you for the wonderful questions. It was really fun I had no idea. We didn't prepare for this. We didn't know what kind of questions and answers were going to come about. And I love that we still continue to get to create the space for each other.
Yeah, well, that's why we do it, is because we've always had these conversations, you and I together, and sometimes May and sometimes Danielle. But like you and I, it's like we have amazing conversations. Like we don't know where they're going, we don't plan them, and they just turn out this way. And so I think it's important for other people to see, we've got our shit in the past, and we're coming through it, and there's hope in this. So I love that you're willing to go there and explore and expose some of these things.
Yeah, it's fun to play in this space, knowing that we both have a desire to bring light and love into the world, and that we get to be open and honest about who we are, in the hopes that we inspire others to do the same, and then in hopes that they inspire others. And it's just this massive tidal wave of love and light and positivity in the world. So I acknowledge you for that, Angus, and thank you for the opportunity to share myself with you.
My pleasure, and thank you for being vulnerable and willing. It's been amazing. I'm looking forward to the next one.
Me too. Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.
Thank you for listening to the Curious Hearts Collective podcast with your host, Vanessa Trufin. Don't forget to check out any of the resources mentioned in today's episode in the show notes